It's time for another Boy Green Daily talking New York Jets, Hard Knocks, and more with a very special guest coming up next right here on Boy Green Daily. Zoinks! It is unequivocally the Super Bowl for New York Jet fans.
Field Yates, baby. Field gosh darn Yates. Let's bring him on the show.
Come on, people. Connor Rodgers is joining the show. What's up, Connor? But Trevor gosh darn Sycamore, baby, for me, personally, my favorite New York Jet of all time.
Wow, it's great to be on. What an intro that was right there.
Paul, nobody does an intro like you, man.
Paul, you give the best intro of literally any podcast that I've ever been.
I'm gonna lose my gosh darn bananas.
Well, it's fair to say bananas were lost last night during the debut of HBO's Hard Knocks. Hey, everybody, my name is Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily. This is a daily New York Jets video show. Buckle your seatbelts because this puppy is quick. It's only 20 minutes in length, and I'm pleased to be joined by a very special guest. You guys all know who he is, but I'll introduce him anyway. Senior National NFL Insider Matt Lombardo of Fan Buzz gracing us with his presence this morning. Thanks for getting us up early with us here, Matt.
Paul, happy to do it. And what an intro you have there of all kinds of star power to open up the podcast. Look at you.
That's right.
You look at the Jets,
Yeah.
and they're about to have a big season. And I told you off air, I'll tell you again, it is the Paul Boy Green Eston Jr. breakout year in 2023.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Now we're going to have Matt Lombardo to that intro. Got to throw another superstar in the mix. I'll talk to your people on the royalty fees that will probably be necessary for such a video appearance. But Matt, first off, before we get into all the wonderful stuff I have going on, you've got a brand new gig at Fan Buzz. I'm fascinated to hear about it. Really one of these kind of projects where you get to kind of build it, not necessarily from the ground up, but sort of in that same vein.
Yeah, Paul, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm working with a former colleague of ours, Tyler Brook, who's doing a fantastic job. As you said, building it from the ground up, putting a great team together, and it's just been really rewarding to kind of spearhead the NFL coverage, getting to work on a lot of interesting, fun projects as the season approaches here, some fun projects coming down the pipeline, and just being able to cover the league on a national level and run the department has been a lot of fun.
Let me ask you, what's your vision for it? What does this baby look like in your mind, Matt?
Yeah, I think it's a great mix of kind of what I bring to the table. Some feature writing is really going to be the bread and butter, tapping into connections around the league, current players, things of that nature, interesting opinionated columns. And when news breaks, we want Fan Buzz to be a destination where people go to really contextualize that news. What are scouts saying about the Jets' big signing? You know, what are executives saying about the up-and-coming cornerback who might be starting because the guy ahead of him got an injury? Those sort of things that really take that NFL coverage to the next level. Those are the type of stories and the type of content we're going to build. Eventually, we're probably going to have some podcasts and video properties, but all that is down the line a little bit from here.
Well, Matt, I say this from the bottom of my heart. I'm so happy for you and all your success. We were able to cross over, obviously, here at Heavy, and hopefully crossing over will happen many times in the future because I've thoroughly enjoyed all of our visits virtually here. They've been brilliant. So I'm looking forward to this Fan Buzz baby. You know, it's just a little newborn. You're kind of nurturing it and letting it grow here and marinate. So, wow, there's a lot of potential here, it seems. At this current project, I believe.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words, Paul. And it's always a lot of fun coming on and doing the Boy Green show, whether it's this podcast or one of the other videos that you have. You doing a great job over there.
Well, let's get into a variety of things. And one of the big reasons, Matt, I wanted to have you on the show, besides the fact you're Matt freaking Lombardo, baby, so I just need to make up excuses to have you on the show. But the fact of the matter is I need a national perspective here because I think we're going to be getting a lot of that this season with the New York Jets. Last night, the debut of HBO's Hard Knocks. The Jets are featured on 6 standalone games at this point for this upcoming season. There's a lot of buzz, but I'm a lot of fan buzz. Wink. There you go.
There you go.
Branding, baby. Thank you. Thank you, Tyler. Offset. I'll take that royalty check. Thank you very much. But Matt, what is the national perspective of the Jets? Do people think they're going to be good? Are people just annoyed with the constant Jets chatter already and the season hasn't even gotten here? Where are people at?
It's amazing what a legitimate franchise quarterback will do to the trajectory of a team, isn't it? I mean, you think of the Jets, and they were always kind of an afterthought in that division for the last several years, even though Joe Douglas has built kind of a juggernaut of a roster in terms of young talent on both sides of the ball. They've drafted really, really well. And I think that there's equal parts optimism that this is a team that can make a lot of noise in the AFC East thanks to Aaron Rodgers. But I think there's a healthy bit of skepticism about just what Aaron Rodgers is at this point in his career, because, let's be honest about this. He was not good last season. And I think that when you look at what the Jets have done, if you can turn back time, if you can turn back the clock, which I'm not sure that you can, but with a guy like Aaron Rodgers, the track record is there. And what they've done, bringing in Nathaniel Hackett, who my big takeaway from Hard Knocks last night was he loves Nathaniel Hackett. Aaron Rodgers does. That was the reason why, if we're being real about this, the Broncos hired him as the head coach a year ago. I wasn't sure up until last night just how deep that bond ran. But the Jets go out, they bring in Nathaniel Hackett, who just 2 years ago turned Aaron Rodgers into an MVP. They already have Garrett Wilson in place, who's a dynamic, field-stretching, play-making wide receiver, and you bring in some familiarity with guys like Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard. All of a sudden, there's some weapons around Aaron Rodgers, and I wouldn't hesitate to say that this is the deepest and most explosive set of skilled position players that Aaron Rodgers has ever played with in his career. And then you look at that defense. You got Quinton Williams up front. You got Sauce Gardner, the defensive rookie of the year, had a case for defensive player of the year last season. Those guys on defense, all of a sudden now, if Aaron Rodgers can turn back the clock, now you're talking about a team that can really compete in the AFC East and maybe more than that. But let's be real about it, Paul. The AFC is a gauntlet. I mean, you're going to have to go through, in the division alone, the Buffalo Bills, one of the most complete rosters and experienced rosters in the NFL. You'll get the pass rushers in place in Miami, the secondary there, especially if and when Jalen Ramsey comes back. It's a tall mountain to climb just within the division, but it all comes down to Aaron Rodgers, and it all comes down to whether or not they can protect him up front.
No doubt about it. Again, the offensive line is the biggest question mark for the New York Jets, and the big question they're still waiting for. Not that we have to get into this deep here on August 9th, but Dwayne Brown is still not returned. He had off-season shoulder surgery on that torn rotator cuff. Him and Robert Saleh were kind of dancing around in June. Will he be ready for training camp? And we don't want to commit to anything. And now we're well into training camp. It's August 9th. He's still 2 weeks from coming off the PUP. And then you got to practice. They got to get ready for the season. So,
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of concern, certainly, from that perspective, Matt. What's your opinion or thoughts or insight on Aaron Rodgers? You mentioned it, that there is some skepticism around because Aaron Rodgers coming off one of his worst years in a long time. Is it because he was injured? Is it because he's old? Was it a combination of both? Was it just an off year with all the crap that seemed to be happening in Green Bay land and it just affected him? Where do you stand on that, man?
Yeah, I think that he's going to be better because I don't think he can get much worse than what he was a year ago. But I will say, watching Aaron Rodgers shy away from contact as often as he did a year ago, not really push the ball downfield vertically, taking away some of that explosiveness. That's what the Jets offense is built around, though, when you think about it, with Garrett Wilson. And we're going to talk about Breece Hall in a little bit here if he's healthy, the explosiveness in the running game. The pieces are there. I'm just going to be really intrigued and fascinated to see if Aaron Rodgers has the ability to bring out the best of those players. If he still is a guy who's going to take chances and give his receivers the opportunity to pull down those contested catches in tight windows, because we didn't see a lot of that last season. It was kind of uncharacteristic of Aaron Rodgers, and whether that's just a tiring of the situation, whether that was not meshing with Matt LaFleur, that remains to be seen. But it really seems like, and I know it's just one, I don't want to use the term propaganda, but it's one feel-good episode of Hard Knocks, of a couple of training camp practices, a glimpse into the relationship between Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. But if that's what it truly is, if Hackett's able to kind of alleviate that pressure and that stress and everything that was going on in Green Bay from Rodgers and allows him to just go back there and sling it, then I think that there is opportunity for the Jets to live up to that lofty potential.
Again, we're speaking with Matt Gastar Lombardo, baby, our senior NFL insider from FanBuzz. Make sure you hit him up on social at that very handle that you see below that handsome mug of his. We are on Boy Green Daily. We're here for another 10 minutes or so as we're talking in a variety of topics. Matt, one of your recent columns, I have it here in front of me, was discussing some of the top NFL Comeback Player of the Year candidates and, primed to reignite their careers. You guys can check out that column again at Matt Lombardo NFL on his Twitter account. I'm curious, Breece Hall cracking the list. Is there a strong belief that Breece Hall can return? Because a torn ACL is more common certainly in today's NFL, but still the analytics and history normally tells you that it takes these kind of players a little bit of time to get back to their former selves. There's always exceptions, Adrian Peterson's, of course, but for the most part, it sometimes takes a little bit. What's the thing here, Breece? Because he looked pretty dynamic before the injury.
Yeah, you saw with Saquon Barkley how much he struggled coming back from the torn ACL. But the thought process here, including him on that list, is you talk to people inside that building, and they're as high as can be on Breece Hall. And I had conversations with people a year ago that they thought that if they had Breece Hall, they would have won that division. That's the kind of impact player that he is. And you talk to people around the league, and it's the same sort of thing, that he's a guy that, had he not gotten hurt, takes his place among the top 10 or so running backs in the NFL. I think what he has going in his favor is he's young, coming back from an injury like that. And when you're younger, those things tend to heal a little bit quicker, a little bit better than some of the older veteran players. But you look at what he did a year ago, 4 straight games with a touchdown before he got hurt, over 600 rushing yards. And of course, you look at the 5.8 yards per carry.
Wow.
Those aren't numbers that you kind of, shake a stick at. That's legitimate production. And it all comes down to what he's able to do when he comes back, right? And I think if the Jets are smart, and this is why you hear them linked to Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott and all these names, and Michael Carter in the building, I think they're going to be smart about easing Breece Hall back into action. But let's say that he's just a contributing player for the first 3 or 4 weeks, gets his sea legs back underneath him. Mm-hmm. Week 7, let's say they turn it on and he's the guy who winds up rushing for 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. And the Jets win the division and make a deep playoff run. All of a sudden, you look at the impact that Breece Hall potentially has as the cat, jumps up behind me there.
That's okay.
You look at the impact that Breece Hall has, he's going to be in those conversations, I would think.
And I don't know how much of a chance he will have because you guys could check out the Comeback Player of the Years. The person ahead of him, I think this may be a slam dunk and a beautiful story, by the way, if that indeed does end up happening. I won't do any more scoop skis. You guys got to read the article, but it may be a little difficult for Breece, regardless of what he does, for that beautiful story. Yeah, or anyone on the planet Earth. It may prove difficult to do that. You guys will understand as soon as you check out that article. You brought up Dalvin Cook. All of us Jet fans are like, what the hell? Hard Knocks. I was talking to some people over at Hard Knocks, and they told me they were weighing back and forth whether or not they're going to include Dalvin Cook footage last night. Spoiler alert, they did not because the situation was unresolved, but they were on the fence. They took 11th hours, how they described it, on whether or not they were going to include it behind the scenes of this footage in there. They kept going back and forth. They're trying to gather intel, of course, as all of us are on this situation. They didn't get enough. They said, okay, can it? We'll put it in this box over here. And if Dalvin comes to the Jets, obviously one of these future episodes, they could dive back into some of that footage, obviously, from his visit. What can you tell us about the Dalvin Cook situation? I keep hearing he's interested in the Jets. Adam Schefter said that yesterday on a Jets podcast. But what is it, Matt? What can you tell us? What can you share on that situation?
There's strong mutual interest there, and there has been all along. And it wouldn't surprise me if you're down to 2 teams in 2 situations, both in the AFC East, in the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets. And it wouldn't surprise me if there winds up being a bidding war between those 2 teams, just from conversations that I've had in terms of fit from scouts, that these are great situations, and from people in Dalvin Cook's camp. I mean, there's a strong desire to play alongside Aaron Rodgers. There's a strong desire to play in the New York market and what that untaps. And let's be real about it, Paul. There's an exciting young nucleus with the Jets that all of a sudden veteran players like Dalvin Cook want to come and be part of. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think the Jets have the inside track there based on the mutual interest within both sides. But it is a little surprising that we're sitting here on August 8th, August 9th, whatever it is, and a deal hasn't gotten done with these 2 sides seemingly engaged in some pretty extensive talks for the last couple of weeks here.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm in that classroom back in the day. I'm the guy in the middle, and I keep getting notes passed to me back and forth of liking this other person outside of the room. I'm like, people just talk to each other already. For Pete's sake, we just keep getting all this flirtation going on. But again, I think the rubber is set to meet the road here sooner rather than later. Let's talk about a couple of articles you have coming out for Fan Buzz. Let's do a little bit of a tease here and breakout second-year players. Of course, Jet fans will be, hovering over that one, I'm sure, but it goes beyond, of course, just the New York Jets. That one's a spicy one. What can you tell us? What can you tease about that upcoming article for FanBuzz?
Yeah, Paul, obviously you look around at the 2022 NFL draft class and there's so much talent there, right? I mean, you look at just in New York alone with Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, but the wide receiver class was as deep as I can remember in a number of years. The quarterbacks haven't quite lived up to the hype yet, but look at Desmond Ridder, you look at Kenny Pickett, there are some guys there. So just tapping into sources, coaches, executive scouts around the league, just started throwing around the question. Who's the guy from the 2022 draft class who's going to be that breakout star at their position in 2023? Who's going to become the household name this season? Got a nice list, got some interesting insight, and hope that people check it out. There's a couple surprise names on there, even by my standards, that I was caught off guard that some of these guys were named.
Oh, wow. Spicy. And of course, I understand this is a Jet show, but this is a guy that's the face of the NFL, for Pete's sake. And of course, the Jets will be welcoming into the lovely confines of MetLife Stadium in week 4. It'll be the first time the Jets are on Sunday Night Football in over a decade. And, knock on wood, glass, or any object that's around you, Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers have never faced off against each other in their careers, which seems wild, but every situation, something's come up. So right now it's scheduled week 4, first ever Mahomes versus Rodgers matchup. It'll be on Sunday Night Football. So a very pressing topic for Jet fans. You guys have a nice juicy feature coming out on Mr. Patrick Mahomes, I understand.
Yeah, you look at Patrick Mahomes, Paul, and it's easy to kind of get blinded by what we see on Sundays and the fact that he's forging this first ballot Hall of Famer legacy, just named the number 1 player on the NFL top 100 by his peers for the second time. Mm-hmm. But, it's easy for us to look at it and see the Mahomes magic. But I wanted to talk to players who are on the field against him every week, rival executives who have to build their teams to beat this guy, to find out what makes Patrick Mahomes elite. What's your thumbnail on him if you're putting up the scouting report to distribute to your players? Because it's easy for you and I and other fans and analysts to watch Patrick Mahomes and say, oh, the athleticism is off the charts, the decision making is rapid, and all of these things. But what's it like to go up against Patrick Mahomes? What separates him from the great quarterbacks of this generation, the Joe Burrows, the Josh Allens? And I talked to a handful of people and got their perspective. Some really big names, by the way, are going to be quoted in this story, and it's going to drop sometime in the next couple of days here. And I thought it was just another way to give people a look behind the curtain of what it's like inside the NFL and how these guys view one of the greatest players that we've seen in our lifetime.
Yeah, we can't get enough of that access. Again, he was just featured, of course, on the Netflix series Quarterbacks, which, by the way, was phenomenal. And it was great to see a different side of Mahomes because, like, the Mahomes I had in my head with his Kermit voice, frog action happening was like, wow, look at this nice guy who puts it out there. But the competitive energy, this is my bleeping city. I'm like, whoa, this is a side of Patrick Mahomes that hasn't necessarily always been caught on camera and microphone. So it showed another side of him. So I'm looking forward to seeing another perspective coming out in that FanBuzz article. That should be fascinating, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited for it to drop. And, I love the quarterback series. And, I've found newfound respect for Kirk Cousins as a person. Just, you lose the playoff game and then you drive home and you give your son the bath and have to tell him, no, buddy, we didn't win the game and the season's over. I mean, that heart-wrenching behind-the-scenes stuff gave me a new appreciation for a guy like Kirk Cousins and really what it goes into being an NFL quarterback at the highest level from, day to day throughout the course of a really grueling, grinding season.
Well, let me ask you. I'm just kind of curious. Who do you want to see on the second season of quarterbacks? Because they tried to get you a little variety in the diet. Obviously, Mahomes at the top. He ends up winning the Super Bowl. So distraction thing immediately out the window. I'm sure they pumped their fist about that. If Kirk Cousins has put up a lot of video game numbers, a very solid or above solid, whatever you want to call him, starter. And then you have Mariota who's kind of fighting, which was very interesting to see that dynamic. Are there guys that you want to see on the series?
If I were putting it together, my first three calls would be to Joe Burrow, who I happen to
Oh,
think has the
yes.
potential to go down as one of the all-time greats. And I think there are multiple Super Bowls in Joe Burrow's future. And then
Mm.
I think the guy who could be the savvy veteran who might be fighting a little bit for his job long term, a guy like Dak Prescott. I mean, it's the
Oh, yes.
Cowboys. There's all of the pressure there. And to fill the Marcus Mariota role, who's obviously a far better quarterback with far more upside than Marcus Mariota, Trevor Lawrence. I look at Trevor Lawrence, and I
Wow.
think that he's that next one coming down the pike. And the Jaguars are just a really fascinating story with what they've built around him. And a second year with Doug Peterson, what that's going to mean for Trevor Lawrence's development. Those would be my three guys if I were putting together the show for 2023, 2024.
Matt, I don't know how many jobs you have, but the next job I want you to have is the executive cast director for quarterback season 2. That sounds brilliant. I freaking love that, Liz. So I don't know if you have the time for getting hired for such matters, but hopefully those people that do have those jobs are listening, because that would be a brilliant list. And we can only hope we get that kind of stellar cast for season 2 of that Netflix quarterback series show. Matt, it was awesome having you on. Long overdue. I love doing work with you, so we'll have to do some more work together in the future, man. And all the best to you guys and the Fan Buzz team. I'll be closely monitoring and watching all your guys' great content this year.
Appreciate you, Paul. Thanks for having me on. And I mean what I said. This is the breakout year for Paul Boy Green.
I love that, baby. Hey, sign me the hell up and tell my agent that, because we want some moolah. We got to support the family, of course. Matt, beautiful work. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into Boy Green Daily. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early at 7:30. Take care, everybody. God bless.